Okay, folks, I'd like to call the September 26th meeting of the City of Portage la Prairie now in order. First up, we will have the adoption of minutes of the last meeting.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on September 12th, 2022 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Meyer. Second, Councillor Espy. Comments, questions, errors, omissions, anybody? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? That's carried. Delegations. This evening, as you heard from Mr. Pito, we do have a delegation. Jacob Hanlon is on the phone. We do have the presentation on hand here. It is the PDF called Food Cycler. And so we're going to turn it over to Mr. Hanlon to talk to us a little about this option for our city. And with that, Mr. Pito, if you could take him off of mute and welcome him to council.
Mr. Hanlon, you are available to speak now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council and staff. I just want to start by saying thank you for having me on here virtually tonight. I'm here on behalf of Food Cycle Sciences Municipal Solutions team, and I'm here to discuss a residential solution to food waste. I'll just indicate when to move over to the next slide. So we'll move on to slide number 2 here. So just a little bit about who we are. Food Cycle Science is a Canadian clean technology company based out of Ottawa here in Ontario, and we're 100% focused on food waste diversion solutions using our innovative technology called the Food Cycler. Our in-home food recycler is sold directly to consumers through partners like Vitamix and Breville, and our municipal solutions team has a very successful residential program which helps municipalities divert more food waste and reduce greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with waste. So I'll also mention that Food Cycle Science is a finalist in Impact Canada's Food Waste Reduction Challenge, and we've been awarded funding through this challenge that goes towards our municipal programs. Next slide, please. So we work with many small, rural, remote, and northern communities. As of today, there are 42 municipalities across Canada who have signed on to the Food Cycle program. In terms of municipalities nearby to you, we have partnered with the rural municipality of Woodlands, the town of Neepawa, and East St. Paul, to name a few. East St. Paul actually sold out their 100-unit pilot in 71 minutes, which is a record for us. And they extended their pilot to 200 units pretty much right away. We'll hop over to the next slide here. So the problem with food waste is that it is avoidable. It accounts for a large portion of our household waste. It's smelly, and it's made up of mostly liquid, which is heavy and freezes in the wintertime. And on top of that, food waste decomposing in landfills is responsible for generating harmful greenhouse gases that contribute to the impacts of climate change that we're seeing today. And all these factors make it so that food waste is a problem, and it has a strong municipal impact. Next slide, please. So one of the impacts to municipalities is that since food waste makes up such a large portion of our household waste stream, it's causing our landfills to fill up quickly. And landfill costs and waste collection costs are a major cost to a municipality and ultimately to taxpayers as well. In terms of the environmental impact, when organic waste decomposes in landfills, it's an anaerobic environment where the waste is all compacted together and there's no oxygen getting to the organic waste. So it causes it to produce methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas many times more harmful than CO2, and it's a major contributor to climate change. In our communities, putting food waste in the bin outside can cause some interesting odors, and it can attract unwanted visitors like bears and raccoons and other vermin. So removing food waste from the garbage eliminates these issues, and it also reduces the volume of the garbage. For the town, this can save on operations and collection costs, and it can extend the lifespan of a landfill. For residents, there's less waste, there's no smell, and their garbage is much easier to manage. And if it's in a community where residents are paying for their own garbage through bag tags, this can allow residents to save some money in the long term. We'll head to the next slide. So we often get asked, haven't we solved this already? There are options available, like green bins, which millions of Canadians are accustomed to. But this type of service is popular in large cities with high population density and an investment in expensive infrastructure. Many people in your community might backyard compost, which we love and we think it's fantastic, but The reality is that many people may not have the space, ability, or desire to do this at home, and participation rates have been pretty stagnant for decades. And finally, we can continue to landfill our organics, but the long-term impacts here are costly and harmful to the environment. Next slide. So at Food Cycler, we propose a different way to deal with our food waste, which really focuses on making food waste very easy to deal with and right in our homes. Essentially, we built a small kitchen appliance about the size of a bread machine, where you put in your food waste, and this can include meat, poultry, fish, dairy, even some bones. And you push a button, and in a matter of hours, you have a dry, sterile, odorless, and nutrient-rich soil amendment that comes out. The machine can be used anywhere with a plug, and most people store it in their kitchen, basement, or even in a heated garage. Next slide. So the Food Cycler will process on average 1 kilogram of food waste per cycle. Each cycle takes between 4 and 8 hours to complete, and it uses less than 1 kilowatt hour of power, which is the equivalent to having a computer plugged in for the same amount of time. The result is about a handful of dry, sterile, and odorless soil amendment that can be used in gardening, in an existing composting system, it can be given to a local farm, and it can be processed with leaf and yard waste systems. Next slide. From an environmental standpoint, the Food Cycler compares to backyard composting and anaerobic digestion facilities, but it does represent an approximate reduction in greenhouse gas impact by about 95% when compared to sending food waste to the landfill. Next slide, please. So in terms of the economic impact, our solution offers a return on investment by significantly reducing your waste management costs. In the short term, you'll have less disposal and lower operating costs, and in the long term, you'll extend the life of your landfill, and you'll achieve higher diversion without implementing any costly curbside programs. With traditional waste services, we generate waste, we put it into a bin or a bag, and ultimately it ends up buried in the landfill, either through a collection service or self-haul from residents. But with a Food Cycler, you have the resident generating their waste and processing it right at home without the need for offering new services or putting trucks on the road, and they can benefit from generating their own fertilizer to enrich their garden soil. And additionally, your community can achieve higher diversion without implementing costly programs such as a green bin program. Next slide, please. So one thing we've learned from working with our municipal partners is that residents are very interested in being part of the solution. They want to try new things, they want to do their part to fight climate change, and they want their government to bring these things to their community. With the Food Cycler, you get to bring something innovative and tangible to your residents, and they don't need to live in a big city to be able to divert their organics. We think that food waste diversion should be available to every Canadian, no matter where they live. And on top of the social pressure is the impact of different regulations that are coming out, where diversion targets are set, whether through official regulations or different counties will set targets for the different municipalities. And the Food Cycler, it's a good part of being involved with a plan in place that meets these goals and targets, and it also works for communities such as yours. So what we're doing here with the Food Cycler is we're reducing waste at the source, and we're focusing on that kind of low-hanging fruit, because since food waste accounts for such a large portion of our waste stream, it's the single most impactful strategy to achieving different diversion targets. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that we're working with several municipalities across Canada. To date, we've completed pilots in over 3,000 households across 24 municipalities, and the results are overwhelmingly positive. We have very high levels of participation, and we've achieved a significant amount of net new diversion. Almost everyone who participated would recommend the Food Cycler and will continue using it upon the completion of the pilot programs. In the city of Nelson, British Columbia specifically, their council voted to put a Food Cycler in every home of their city of 10,000 people following the success of their 2 pilots. Next slide, please. So in our municipal programs, we work with municipalities and offer a subsidy model where Food Cycle Science provides a discount as well as federal funding from Impact Canada. This brings the price of the unit down from a $500 retail price to $250. We then ask the municipality to subsidize the cost by at least $100 per unit plus shipping, so that the resident only ends up paying $150 for a $500 machine. Some municipalities will share the cost with the residents by subsidizing more than the $100 per unit, but ultimately this cost-sharing model allows Food Cycle Science, the federal government, the municipality, and the resident to each have a hand in funding this food waste reduction program. For a municipality of your size, we'd recommend a program consisting of 100 households where the $250 unit cost is shared between the resident and the municipality in a format similar to the one here on the screen. So for example, if 100 households participated in a pilot program, it would be a net cost to the municipality of $10,000 plus shipping. Next slide. So I'd like to welcome the City of Portage la Prairie to be a part of this initiative, as we believe your community would be a great fit to the benefits of this program. Today, I kindly ask that you receive our presentation, and if there is interest in a program, to refer this to staff for a report and recommendation. And I'd like to thank you for allowing me to present to you today, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Very interesting presentation on definitely a need for a lot of municipalities and something for us to think about. But I'd like to open it up to questions from councillors, if there are any. Firstly, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I only have one question. Everything else is pretty straightforward. What's life expectancy of the product?
Yes. Yep. So the current model that we have out, life expectancy is 5 to 7 years. And then the new one we have coming out in the spring, early spring, is 7 to 10 years. And we found that with the current model, kind of the 5 to 7 year range has aligned well with waste contracts that a lot of municipalities and cities have, where it's usually a 5 + 1 type contract. So it ends up kind of fitting in there with the life expectancy. And I'll just add as well that we do have warranties on our units. It varies depending on the size of the pilot program, or in places such as Nelson, where they have the full rollout of food cyclers in their households. We definitely work with municipalities to tailor a program that fits best with them, and this includes things like extended warranties.
Thanks.
Councillor Knox.
Thanks, Jacob, for your presentation. I currently sit on our, as well as other councillors, on our regional landfill board, and we definitely talk a lot about the life cycle of our landfill. So from this, I'm just definitely going to commit to take this program to our board to talk to them about it, because it might be a good fit there. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So if this municipality was interested in it and the pilot scope included 100, you're pretty clearly outlining it plus shipping. Do you have any idea of an all-in cost for a municipality to receive 100 to 150 of these units, what it normally is costing to ship?
Yes, so I just take a quick look at kind of our averages here. Shipping is usually anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500, and that's based on kind of shipping all over Canada. We can definitely get estimates anytime you would need them, and we always kind of provide an average, where we'll have a low and a high depending on let's say the week. We try to have it as accurate as possible, but on average it's been between $1,500 and $2,500, typically on the lower end of that. Okay,
any other further questions from council? All right, thank you for your presentation. We're going to defer this to management and to come up with some recommendations for council to consider. And as you heard, another councillor taking it away to our landfill authority. So thank you very much for now.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the presentation, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, next on the agenda, public hearings. You know, we have none. Moving into committee reports, Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Standing in for me, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor
Thank you.
Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. City Planning Economic Development Committee also has nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. Community Services Committee. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. One item on the agenda is the Portage la Prairie Revitalization Corporation funding agreement. We did discuss in committee at our last meeting that this agreement starts is for January 1st of 2023. And just after some consideration and thinking about that we are in an election period right now, and next month we will have a new council around this table. Knowing the great work that PCRC does, I think it's really important that a new council gets to understand that and hear about it before they're put into an agreement for 3 years. So I'm going to make a motion to defer this funding agreement to our next meeting, or to the November 14th council meeting.
Okay. So we have a motion to defer,
Your worship, I would second that motion.
second by Councillor Meyer. Any comments or questions before voting? All those in favor of the deferral? And that's carried. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Waterworks Committee also has nothing to report.
And again, Councillor Espy for the Transportation Committee.
The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from the Public Safety Committee tonight.
We do not have any deferred business, but we do have a few items under new business, and we're going to start with Councillor Meyer on our August billing reports.
Yes, thank you, Your worship. I think as council knows, I always kind of get a little thrilled when I look at the building reports. I'm going to, of course, not draw your attention to the city and the RMs respectively, other than a regional perspective. So drawing your attention to that, in brief, you'll see that the number of permits are down from where they were at this time last year, but you are going to see that the values are significantly higher. It does give you a true representation of what's going on for new builds within our community. And the only items I'd like to point out is that you're going to see a large increase in some industrial permits and some large increase in some commercial permits. So it does give you, as I say, a true representation of where the expansion and so on in our community is actually happening from. So once again, thanks again to the planning district and all the work and effort that they put into managing that amount of permits. And that, Your worship, is my report.
Thank you. Any questions as it relates to that report, Council? Okay. Moving along, we have new business on PDRI contract extension. Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. As stated, the issue is consideration of extending the contract with Portage District Recycling, Inc. for the collection and processing of residential recyclables. The current one-year contract extension for the 3-year contract between the city.
Councillor Espy, can I just ask you to move your mic a little bit closer?
Sure
I'm
thing.
not sure it's picking up. Perfect, thank you.
The current one-year contract extension for the 3-year contract between the city and PDRI was negotiated and signed by previous council, and it expires on November 30th, 2022. The contract allows for extensions for up to 3 additional years. Multi-Material Stewardship Manitoba is currently in the process of developing a transition plan to shift to full extended producer responsibility for Manitoba's residential packaging and printed paper recycling program. In the new plan, MMSM would take over the post-collection services, and municipalities would have a choice to opt in or out of MMSM taking over collection services. It is expected that municipalities will start transferring over to the new program in 2023-24. Due to the expected changes, we have asked PDRI to provide a proposal to extend the contract for 1 year. If council chooses to not extend the contract, it is unlikely that an alternative contractor would be found that would be willing to set up a recycling program for only 1 year. PDRI currently performs curbside collection of residential recyclable materials with sorting and processing for shipment in their facility on Phillip Street. They also operate a used oil depot, oil and antifreeze container depot, an electronic waste depot, and a household hazardous waste depot. They also collect and process commercial and rural materials. The contracted cost for the 2021-22 year of the current PDR contract is $315,894.06. This includes residential material collection and processing, as well as other services including hazardous waste collection and electronic waste collection. The 1-year extension proposal provided by PDRI includes an increase for inflation. The proposed price for the collection, sorting, and processing of recyclables is a lump sum of $317,193.84. The cost for additional services, including hazardous waste, electronic waste, and other items, is $11,226.98. The total for all services is $328,420.82, for a total increase of $12,526.76 over current costs. This is an approximate 4% increase and is reasonable based on the current predicted inflation rate. While it would typically be administration's position to advise council to follow the city procurement policy and issue a competitive tender, it would not be recommended at this time due to the upcoming changes expected from MMSM. In addition, the proposal from the Portage and District Recycling Inc. appears to be reasonable, and the public appears to be very satisfied with the service they receive from PDRI. Administration is also very satisfied with PDRI's performance. It is the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award a 1-year contract extension to Portage and District Recycling Inc. for the collection, sorting, and processing of recyclables for a lump sum of $317,193.84 net of GST, and for additional services including hazardous waste, electronic waste, and other items as described in the PDRI proposal for the lump sum of $11,226.98 net of GST. And I so move.
By Councillor Espy, second by Councillor Meyer. Questions or comments from council?
No concerns.
I have an observation for council's consideration. I guess we just earlier in this meeting, we deferred a decision to the next council. This is more administrative in nature, being that, we are only going for the 1 year, mainly because of the changes that are coming from the provincial government. We don't know what that's going to look like. Any concerns with regards to approving a 1-year extension, knowing that this is actually not due until November 30th, which the new council could, in fact, deal with in November the 14th. But we might be jamming that meeting up. Just always cognizant of the fact that we're approving agreements which aren't actually due and could be handled by the next council. Any thoughts on that, Councillor? Councillor Knox.
Yeah, I don't have the same feelings I do on this one, just because we are going to be in such a transition with the multi-materials to stewardship stuff coming up, that I'm comfortable with this 1-year extension for sure.
Any other comments? Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too echo Councillor Knox's thoughts. I don't have an issue with this one, as it's a 1-year contract only, and it's in relationship to something that we need to get in place sooner rather than later. So I certainly support the recommendation as it is.
If there's nothing further, all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we are now moving to the sale of a fire truck. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have in front of us the approval of a sale of a retired 1992 Spartan fire truck. So the City of Portage Fire Department houses a 1992 Spartan fire truck, which is retired and not currently in service. New Rosedale Colony would like to purchase the apparatus in as-in condition for $12,000, and we believe this to be fair market value for the truck. Older fire apparatuses can be difficult to sell due to regulations surrounding their use, so we feel this is a beneficial transaction for the city. In addition, we believe having the fire truck remain within our response area is a benefit to our department. Under the city's public tendering and procurement policy, AC-AW, a council resolution is required to sell surplus capital assets valued over $5,000. So it is administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the sale of the 1992 Spartan fire truck to New Rosedale Colony for the sum of $12,000.
Moved by Councillor Knox, second by Councillor Espy. Comments or questions with regards to the sale? Councillor Knox.
Yeah, just a comment. I've had some discussions with our fire chief, and I mean, it's nice that we're going to get some money for that, but the fact that we're selling this in our local area, and if we had a major emergency, we'd still be able to rely on it if needed, I think is a benefit to us. So I think it's a good deal for us, for sure.
Agreed. Any further comments? All those in favor of the motion? That's carried. One item of old business is the second and third reading of the bylaw for the Water Treatment Plant Reserve Fund. Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you stated, this is the second and third reading. First reading happened on September the 12th, and the issue is to implement a new reserve fund for the upgrade of the expansion of the water treatment plant. The City of Portage la Prairie supplies potable water to over 5,200 customers within the city, a number of large industrial customers, and to nearby rural municipalities and water cooperatives. The 2021 audited consolidated financial statements were approved by Council on June 13th, 2022, It was indicated the utility fund surplus for 2021 of 1.1 million would be contributed to a new reserve fund for the upgrade and expansion of water treatment plant buildings and equipment. In order to facilitate this contribution, the city needs to establish this reserve fund bylaw. It is the recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the water treatment plant reserve fund by giving bylaw 228742 second reading, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Espy, seconded by Councillor Knox. Comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's carried.
And that bylaw number 22-8742 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Espy, seconded by Councillor Meyer. Comments or questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, at 6:25, I will adjourn this council meeting. We are going to move right into committee, which covers all of our departments, all of our areas. Some might consider it committee as a whole, if you will. We're going to move right into that. And we're going to call that meeting to order at 6:25. Councillor Espy, Finance, Legislative and Property Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee has nothing to report.
City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Community Services Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a note that today the city declared that this is Truth and Reconciliation Week for our city, and a proclamation was made. There's lots of activities happening this week. We have a mural. PCRC has a mural that's being unveiled on Thursday as well. There is a march to the museum on Friday. Lots of information on the PCRC website, and of course the city will be sharing that information on the city Facebook page. But get involved, and it's a good week for us to make sure that we're keeping our mind on moving towards truth and reconciliation in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. Back to Councillor Espy for Waterworks.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Waterworks Committee has nothing to report.
And how about the Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy?
Also nothing to report.
Thank you. And finally, Public Safety, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from public safety this evening.
And with that, I will adjourn committee meeting at 6:27. Enjoy your evening, everybody. Thank you very much.